Our project today is going to be the simple drawstring pouch. We make them in various sizes. Today's size is a 9 by 14 to start, and then it ends up with a 7 by 7 little pouch with a quick drawstring. Our finishings on the inside are done with pinking shears, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And it helps you practice making a casing, and your pivots, of course, and these skills that make the bottom of our bag is almost exactly the same as what you would do to hem something. So if you can make a drawstring bag, you'll be able to hem your pants after this. Let's get started. All right, we're going to prep our fabric and get it ready for our sewing process. So first, on my drawstring bag, I need to decide if my print is a directional print. I'll need to lay it the way I would like it to appear at the end. I like my scallops reaching down. It reminds me of a mermaid's tail, so I like it this way. This would be my top. If you don't have a directional print, you don't really need to worry too much. Once we get it in our position, we are going to mark a 1/2 inch. I'll be using my seam gauge today. 1/2 inch, as I can see here, the 1 inch and the 0, it'll be right there in the middle at the 1/2. We're going to go a 1/2 inch down from the top all the way across using a marking pencil. You can use a pen, a pencil, chalk if you have access to it. We're just going to put a few extra marks here along that 1/2 inch line. And this is going to help us to guide our casing when we hit the iron. So just a nice 1/2 inch line, dashed line all the way across my top on my right hand side. Then we're going to flip over our fabric and go to the wrong side. On the wrong side, we want to eventually have a 1 inch casing. And how that's going to work is we'll be folding down to that little line that we created on the front, and then folding again to create a 1 inch casing. So if we do a quick little bit of math, that is 2.5 inches from the edge. That'd be a 1/2 inch on that first folded seam, an inch for 1/2 of it, and another inch on the other side. So 2.5. And put our markings here on the back side as well, right from the same top edge. I'll put my markings at 2.5 inches. These are going to again become my guide marks as I hit the iron. All right, we are all ready. We are moving on to the iron. So over at the iron, we'll be taking our fabric and folding it over wrong side to wrong side with that marking line in mind to create our finished edge. So I like to use my fingers to press it a little bit. I'll use the iron to press that down to create our nice folded edge. Get that last little corner here. Then I will continue that fold and line it up with my little marks that I made 2.5 inches down. Get it as close as we can, and we want to keep that even line. Again, this will become our casing where our ribbon will run through. So we need to keep our spacing wide enough for our ribbon and even as we will see all of our stitches from the front side. Right, we are done with our pressing. It is simply folded over one side and then folding another. If you can do this, you can hem. Let's head to the sewing machine. Okay, here we are at the sewing machine. We are going to line up our casing under our needle. We're going to pay attention to stitching right along this finished edge here so that we can allow for our ribbon to travel through this created casing at the top. So we're going to get this under here, get a few stitches in to start, and back stitch to anchor that in place. This area will be getting a lot of use, so you want to make sure that has a good back stitch in place. back stitch to the back. And we have just created our casing. You can see that we have a nice straight line on both sides, and our flaps are open on each end as a tube. It's going to look really great. Okay, now that our casing has been sewn and we have that completed at the top, we are now going to make our bag itself. That is going to be done by folding our fabric right sides together. That is our pretty sides touching. And we are going to pay very careful attention to making sure that we line up the top edge of our casing. If any of our sewing gets off through here, that's okay. It can be fixed in the end. But the only spot that will remain unfixable will be this folded top of our casing. So we're going to take extra care to make sure that is lined up. And I'm going to stick a pin in there right through all the layers. That is going to anchor there. We're then going to line up our corners to the best of our ability. They might not be perfect. Sometimes our casings get a little bit off during our ironing. We'll do the best we can. Those pins, we're going to get a few pins in here along the edges to anchor it before we hit the sewing machine. One more. And we are ready. I'm going to start right here on the bottom of my casing, right where I did my back stitching. That's about where I'm going to start with my 1/4 inch seam. So we're going to get underneath our sewing machine, and I'm going to put my needle down again right at where my back stitching on my casing was. I'm going to do a few stitches forward and back stitch. And sew to the corner. As I get to my corner, I'm going to pivot, leaving my needle in, lifting and turning. As I get to pins, I'm always pulling them. I never run over pins. It's a recipe for disaster. As I get to my end, I will drive right off the edge and back stitch back on and drive off the edge again. And we are free. Let's take a look. We have just made our bag. If we did everything right, we should have our casing flap open at the top and stitching all around that L shape there. Now let's go to the cutting station. All right, next up, we are going to be doing our finishing. So on our bag, we have a couple different options. One, we could leave it and you'll end up with all these little strings coming off as our fabric unravels. Number two, we could go to an overlock machine like a serger, and we could cover and cut those edges and encase them fully in stitches. But we are doing a quick bag today. So here are our pinking shears. These are our zigzag edged shears that we will use to finish this edge. Why this is a great finishing technique is that it's super fast, number one, and it prevents all of your threads from going and fraying after this. So once a couple of the initial threads come off, you will no longer have any fraying occurring on this bag. So we're going to get just those raw edges. Remember not to cut any of your stitches. We're going right up along our stitches here, and we are done. So we have just done that L shape following our stitches. We've included cutting near our casing as well. We don't have to reduce any bulk and corners today because our pinking shears really reduce that for us. All right, we're going to turn it right side out and we will have our finished bag. Poke our corners. So we're going to be using this little tool called a bodkin. If you don't have a bodkin, you can use a safety pin. We're going to take this and it just clips on like some tweezers, and you slide the ring down onto our ribbon. So it holds it really securely. What I like about this is it has a longer shaft, so it makes it easier to slip through our casing a lot more efficiently than your standard safety pin. All right, we're just going to stick that into our casing and around we will go. My ribbon is a little funky. There was a local business out of Portland that made custom scrubs for some hospitals, and they donated an amazing supply of fabrics and ribbons and finishes and tools of the trade to our classroom. So if you see the words Scrub Med, that's where our ribbon comes from. You can use anything you want. You can use a gross grain ribbon is also really great, or a satin one, or a ribbon. Maybe like a cotton cording would work as well. All right, now that I've got it through, I'm just gonna pull my bodkin off, take my tails and tie them together. I like to make sure on these flat ribbons that it is flat through our casing. I don't like it twisted in there. It'll lead to a more professional product if we have that done. All right, so I like to cinch up my bag just a little and add a knot to the end. With this nice twill ribbon that we have here, you don't have to do any kind of finishing to the end, but if you're using a gross grain or satin, you'll want to burn the ends. You can either use that with a hot knife or with a lighter at the end and just give it like a quick little melt. So that's it. Here's our bag. How easy is this? We can cinch it up, whoop, whoop, and it's a perfect little pouch for everything you have in your backpack. Keep it nice and safe. You can make them all different sizes, make teeny tiny ones for the tooth fairy, make really big ones for your bestie to put their track spikes in at a game. It's just awesome. So have fun. Happy sewing.